This is an image of Osiris Orion, the green man, the god of rejuvenation, the god of resurrection, the god of vegetation, the god of doubles, the god of the dead. And here we see the shape for that hook on the end of a shepherd's staff that has come down to us as symbolism for a shepherd's staff. Well, believe it or not, at least by these people in these ancient mythos, he is called the true shepherd, which makes perfect sense, at least in the fractal sense of it all, because you got to take into account Zechariah 11:17 describing his contemporaries. In our age, these people that still follow after this mystery, his contemporaries are considered idol shepherds, in which they are the idol shepherds of the material Babylon world. And then their fans, I guess you could say, which would be their sheep, will be what they leave behind to the slaughter. And that's when they go on off to Shinar. Of course, as you can see, they're deceiving everyone. They don't want them to know what it's really all about. They just keep filling them with more BS from these media stories, which are further coded. And then at the same time, the people aren't really getting any sustenance. They're just getting filler. And you can see the reflection from high to low between the roots of the idol shepherd and then, of course, the faction of contemporaries that follow after him that begin to mimic that same reflection. Once again, even mimic the same actions. So in other words, they're really not exercising what they consider as their free will, because they're following a pattern, a tradition. They're bound within it, just as we see this being is bound. He is bound even to a mutual oath that was taken in the book of Enoch, and that this oath is a binding until they see this thing through to its end. And everything that happens to them from point A to point Z is exactly what's going to happen to the contemporaries that follow after him. As Jesus Christ has already declared, the wages of sin is death. So we're going to see some interesting scripture that is going to support so many different ways that we have viewed this thus far between chapters 17 and 23. Some of the things that I briefly covered in the last video, and even where I might got cut out with the audio, don't worry, I reviewed the video and I know what I need to speak about a little further. So I think at this point, let's go ahead and look at this Osiris Orion individual for the symbolism of the green man, so that we can see it being told to us from Ezekiel in chapter 17. But before we do that, let's kind of answer the question who Osiris is. I mean, he's not Lucifer, okay, but yet he is representing a group that has been influenced by Lucifer. And we can almost see where so many people are so easily thrown off the track of truth. It's almost like it's intended here to throw certain people off of this understanding. But by pairing this image here to over here, I feel that that was intended to convey to the initiates and adepts that this was the truth of the matter. In other words, this would have been the wild goose chase, depicting it as Lucifer. And notice they don't say anything about it hanging upside down from Orion. But yet they put the symbolism of the X and the green man over here, so that all those that were taught this information would understand. Well, keep in mind, I'm a seer. I see it for what it is. I'm basically taught on the spot in every instance of all this, and you'll see every bit of it will be supported. So it's interesting here. You can see how so many people are thrown off the track. So obviously, Osiris Orion is not Lucifer. So what would he represent? Well, I think the biggest clue here would be seeing the double eyes of Horus behind him, which is in essence separating the identity of Orion Osiris from the prince, the fallen prince of this world, Horus, the son of the sun god, or as he is known in Sumerian traditions, Enki, the Nehesh, the serpent. Okay, so we can see almost that These eyes of Horus are being depicted almost as an overseer from another realm, in essence, which would be the spiritual realm. As I've told you, Enki, Horus never had a material manifestation, never had a material body. Now, there were many people after these depictions of these deities that modeled themselves after, that even called themselves by these titles, that did have material forms. But the roots of the origin of the inspiration for these beings is in the spirit, just as you see these eyes depicting, in essence, a secondary dimension from which the eyes of Horus are watching from. That's the fallen prince of this world, who is in the spirit realm, as I said, which would link up to what CERN is doing with their great work to find that God particle. Now they're looking for the dark matter, in essence, to put that God particle into it, the material form. We see what has been shown to you as being in material form in the resemblance of men. Now, this Osiris is further connected to Orion, and then Orion, we found, is revealing iron. That's the clue. That tells you who Osiris is. Osiris is not a singular individual. Osiris represents an entire clan of individuals. Osiris is going to represent the fallen sons of God and their original union between the daughters of men that produced the first descendancy of these supposed lions' whelps, as we see quoted in Ezekiel chapter 19, for 2 pairs of lions' whelps that were then taught to become hunters under the same inspiration that we see for the symbolism of the constellation of Orion as the great hunter. Now, let's think about this imagery here. Now, you've just seen what I have showed you with the depiction of chapter 17 of the book of Ezekiel. And then there we see verse 4, he cropped off the top of his young twigs and carried it into a land of traffic. Well, that's an eagle that is carrying a twig somewhere into a land of traffic. Let us notice that in the left talons, what do we see the eagle clutching? What should the eagle be clutching for this to be consistent with the symbolism of Orion? Well, anybody familiar with that knows right off the bat, Orion is depicted, at least in the constellation, as shooting a bow and arrow. And there is the completion of the fractal. The eagle of Orion is clutching